Hello, guys. I'm trying to get Albert up here. Albert, I sent you a co-host invite. I don't know if you can see that. Hi, Josh. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And just as a heads up, I got called into work today, and I'm like really close to getting off. So I'll have to get my pass down to my relief here in a couple of minutes, and it's only gonna take me like 30 seconds. No big deal. But if I have to like abruptly mute for just 30 seconds, that's why.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Thanks for the heads up. So we'll
Yeah, I
probably.
wasn't. I wasn't supposed to work today, and then I got called in last minute, so I didn't. It was so short notice. I didn't want to try and reschedule any of this. So
Oh yeah, don't even worry. We on our first one we tried to do of this. There was a plane delay, so
mm,
I mean, by no fault of his own, it was just like we ended up waiting for like an hour. So 30 seconds, we got that, no problem.
I totally understand that. So, yeah, it won't be long, and then I'll be, driving around to get my wife coffee and stuff like that. But I'll be on the phone with you guys, so we'll be all right.
Yeah, okay, for sure. So, yeah, what we'll do is I'll go ahead and start by introducing what we're doing, and then we usually go through each of our groups, kind of just explain who we are. Then we let the candidate kind of do their initial spiel, and then we get into questions. So I'll just start by welcoming people. We are recording this, so welcome if you're listening now, welcome if you're listening later. This is the third in our series. The Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus actually initiated this little venture and invited us, the Christian Caucus, as well as the Center for Natural Law, to come together and get to interview candidates from our perspective, because we feel like, we might have things that we're looking for in candidates that might be overlooked in other interviews. So we think this is great for people like us who, want to know more about these issues specifically so that we can make better decisions on who we want to support. So with that, maybe Albert, would you like to introduce Pro-Life Caucus and what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Albert Veldhuizen. I'm the secretary of the Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus, and we were formed shortly before the 2020 National Libertarian Party Convention. And before then, the focus of pro-life members of the Libertarian Party for many conventions, going back to the early 2000s, had been to abolish the abortion plank, but that effort had always ended up in failure. So in 2020, a number of us, Russell Brooksbank, our chairman, and I and a bunch of others kind of organized a more formal group. And at that convention, we moved to have the plank abolished from the floor. And we were unsuccessful, but we got the most amount of votes that had ever been cast for abolishing the plank. And then, we got about 45%. And then we did the same in 2022, where we finally succeeded with over 65% of the delegates voting in favor. So as a result of organizing pro-lifers and also working with other caucuses, we succeeded in getting the abortion plank, and our current goal is to maintain that progress, maintain that so that the Libertarian Party will never go back to a pro abortion position. So we need to solidify the LP in a more pro-life direction. And I'll just quote from our preamble, which says that the Libertarian Party stands for the protection of the rights of the smallest minority, the individual. We cannot think of an individual that needs more protection than a preborn person. So we believe that a pro-life stance is the correct stance for the Libertarian Party. And we strive to move the culture of the Libertarian Party towards that stance by supporting candidates for party leadership, nominees to public office, changes to our party platform, and education of fellow members. So that's a basic introduction to our group and what we do. So back to you, Kara.
Thanks, Albert. So I think it's really cool. The Pro-Life Caucus has some tangible results. Hopefully we can kind of follow suit. We're a little bit newer. We only started last year, probably towards the end of April. I was kind of looking to see if there was already a Christian caucus, and the only thing that seemed to be was like a defunct one. We've kind of got a Discord server that's going pretty strong, and we've done some efforts already with lobbying. Most recently, we were working on the defund Planned Parenthood bill, but we're into stuff like just promoting voluntarism, lobbying, supporting candidates that are Christian or at least are coherent with our values. We want to influence the party for Christianity. And we want to be active in our church communities as well, promoting liberty. So we've got like Bible chat, prayer, channels for, the various things that we're interested in doing, from pro-family, pro-life, anti-war, religious freedom, stuff like that in our Discord. So if you're interested in joining us, let me know. I can get you in there. So when we do these, we start by introducing ourselves, and then Josh, if you're still not busy or have already gone through what you need to, maybe you can introduce yourself and a brief little, a bit about your campaign.
Sure. First of all, thank you guys so much for taking this time with me. I really appreciate it. It's awesome of you guys to have me on and do this for all the candidates. It's definitely, it's hard for third-party candidates to get their voice out there. So the more often we get to do stuff like this, the better. I'll just start by saying I agree with both your caucuses. In fact, when Al brought the deletion of the plank up at the last convention, I walked around the floor whipping votes for it. It was something that I had been hoping would happen for quite some time. I agree wholeheartedly with the Pro-Life Caucus. Of course, I'm also Christian, practicing Christian, working on catechism to get to the Orthodox religion. But as for now, I still go to the regular evangelical church with my family, and my kids all go to Awana, and we do meal trains and all that stuff with the church too. So we are an active part of the church. My faith is very, very important to me. I know that sometimes I can be extremely edgelordy online, but at the end of the day, everything that I do, it's going to revolve around faith in my personal life. So, yeah, I'm the pro-family, pro-life, pro-freedom candidate for the Libertarian Party this year. That's who I am. I think I'm the only candidate besides maybe Toad who has a staunch pro-life view of politics. I think that if government should exist at all, one of the most important things of that government, the most important job of that government is to protect the rights of all human beings in their constituents, and that includes the preborn, unborn. And so that's a very serious principle to me. Of course, family. This campaign has a very big focus on trying to put the incentives back on strong family values. I talk a lot about Title 4D of the Social Security Act, which I think is not talked about enough. This is an incentive that the federal government installed in 1975, signed into law by Gerald Ford. It essentially pays the states to separate families, create a visitor in a child's life. Since 1975, when it was signed into law, we went from 1 in 60 children living in a fatherless home to 1 in 4. That's an astronomical rate of fatherless children out there living in a fatherless home or a single parent home. It actually goes higher in a single parent home if you just make it single parent, but not much. Unfortunately, the family law system is very, very slanted towards one side mostly, but they have to create a visitor to get their money and get these programs involved so that the government basically can pay them $1 for every 88 cents they spend. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart, of course, as somebody who's been through the family law system several times. So that's really important to me. I talk a lot, of course, I'm the anti-war candidate. I came from the warfare state. That's how I got to these ideals to begin with. I served on board the USS Constellation during Iraqi freedom in 2003, 2004. I was sitting in the middle of the Persian Gulf when George Bush declared war on Iraq. Our battle group dropped over 100 million tons of ordnance on Baghdad. As an 18-year-old kid after 9/11, thinking I was going to protect my family and my friends and my community and my country, I was slapped real hard with the realization that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11 and we had no business being there. So I was really, really jaded on the military-industrial complex when I got home. I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. It took me a long time to come to grips with us not really being the good guy foreign policy wise anymore. But once I did, I realized that I needed to, my atonement would be trying to fight the warfare state in any way that I could. Of course, I found Ron Paul in 2007, who was speaking my language. I mean, he was speaking directly to my soul. He said everything the way I felt. So I worked on his campaign in 2008. I found out that the GOP had no home for our ideals. They were always going to be the party of McCain and Bush and Dick Cheney, and no matter how many Ron Pauls we can install here and there, we were always going to be the redheaded stepchild or the whipping boy. And so I left the Republican Party in 2010, joined the Libertarian Party because I looked at it, I viewed it as the only anti-war party in the country, and I believe that to be true today. There's not a better home for me, especially now that we've gotten rid of the abortion plank, and we have things like the Christian Caucus and the Mises Caucus, which espouses Austrian economics, which I agree mostly with. I mean, 99.9% of the time with. Those are kind of the central tenets of my campaign. It's the Federal Reserve, the putting strong emphasis back on the family, of course. The pro-life sentiment, and ending the warfare state. I mean, these are really, some of the biggest problems that we face as a country today, if not the biggest problems we face as a country today. And so those have become the core group of my platform. Of course, I have other parts of my platform too. I'm an extremist when it comes to gun rights. I don't think that the federal government has any right whatsoever to tell people how they can defend their property, their families, and themselves. I believe that mental health care in our country has become the absolute worst for-profit business in this country, and I think that the government is subsidizing that, and so I want to take those subsidies away. I want people to have to compete. I want parents that are thinking about giving their children mutilative surgeries and long-term affecting gender medicine, puberty blockers and the like, have to really think about those things. I want doctors that are doing those things and pushing children to those things to be prosecuted. Basically, I think that it's not much different than, say, like child trafficking. This for profit. They're harming kids forever. The suicide rate is not going down in that community. So that's another thing that I talk about quite a bit. I know, when we get into the libertarian philosophy, some people argue with me on abortion, and people argue with me on immigration, and some people argue with me on whether kids should have the right to make their decisions when it comes to these kind of long-term things. But I believe that it's the correct position when it comes to libertarian ideals. I believe that as I said in the beginning of this, if a federal government is to exist, it should protect the rights of everyone. And I think that kids have the right to not be pushed in those directions. So that's it. That's really, the basis of my campaign. I think that the country has gone crazy. I'm a blue collar working class guy who is just fed up with it. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer or a longtime politician. Most of you guys on this call know me. You guys have seen me around the Libertarian Party at least since 2016. This will be my fourth national convention in a row. Of course, I spent some time on the Libertarian National Committee, 2.5 terms as well. So, I'm looking for delegates. I want you guys to give me that position when we get to DC. I think that we have the best platform. I think we have the most unique opportunity to get at least the big alternative medias. I'll be on Timcast tomorrow for the third time. We're working on Patrick Bet David. We're working on Rogan. We're working on Sean Ryan. So I mean, we're doing the things that I wanted to see out of a candidate when I was hoping for a Dave Smith run or something like that. And I think that we can make it exciting. So I hope to have your guys' support, and I appreciate you letting me be here. And my relief did just get here, so I'm gonna when I mute here, I'll be off at least 30 seconds.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for that snapshot. And also, I don't know if you can hear this part, but just wanted to say that, that's really awesome about, I think I saw when you got baptized. I've only been active on Twitter for maybe a little less than a year and a half, but I remember I was following you at the time when you got baptized and you posted it, and I just think that's really great. So congratulations on that walk.
Oh, and also, I'm done with my pass down now. But
Okay.
also, during that same time, I just want to emphasize something that I thought was really cool about my baptism. But also, my son got baptized with me at the same time, who's now 12, and we adopted him and his little sister in 2020, and they came from a really bad situation. And they had been told all their lives that God was evil, and the reason why they were in the situation they were. And when he showed up, he believed that only white nationalists believe in God and all this crazy stuff. And we never forced him to have faith or go to church or anything. And it took about a year, and he decided he wanted to go get some cookies and lemonade. So he came to church with us, and then we asked him if he wanted to do Awana. He said, well, that sounds kind of fun. So he started doing Awana. And by the time I was getting baptized, he had come to us on his own without anybody pushing him, and said that he wanted to be baptized too. So he actually was baptized with us. I thought that was really neat. I just wanted to emphasize that part.
No, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's so awesome. I almost like teared up because for one thing, it's just awesome that he was able to, come around after being fed so many lies. And then also just I think adoption is one of the most important things if a Christian is in the position to do so. Because I mean, that's one of the most pro-life things we can do.
Well, and if you had
Uh,
seen his testimony, I cried. I bawled like a baby. So,
that's
but yeah.
so cool. I mean, that's like one of the only things like that, we pray for our children as Christians is that, they come to give their lives to God in Christ. So thank you for sharing that. So this is our third one. So I've got more questions this time because I've gone to kind of work out some of the kinks from our first two. So Albert, I don't know if you want to go like a few back and forth or because I've got like maybe 9 or something like that. I've got some general, some specific to Josh. And I can go first or second. If you're ready to go, that's
Yeah,
fine.
I'm ready
Or
to go. Yeah, I've got.
oh, and sorry, Albert. Let me just say one more thing. So that I forgot to mention, the other thing we do is have people put in the comments on the thread any questions, and Jessica is gonna kind of like look those over, and then after Albert and I have gone through our prepared questions, then Jessica, if she sees some to bring up, she can filter out that way, rather than just bringing up anybody who requests. So if you have questions, please put them in the thread, and she'll be checking those as we go. And so go ahead, Albert.
Okay, thanks, Josh, for the very extensive introduction, which answered a lot of the questions that we'd normally ask. But I just wanted to go into more depth on some of the issues you brought up. Obviously, you claim to be pro-life, but does your pro-life position appear in any of your literature website? And the reason I ask is that I had a discussion with another member of the Pro-Life Caucus, and they mentioned that they thought the only person who actually claimed to be pro-life on their website was Hornberger. So just kind of want you to comment on that, and also maybe to distinguish yourself from the other candidates currently running on that issue.
Sure. So our website, we've been updating the planks as we go, and it hasn't been updated in a couple months, but we do have a pro-life plank. It's just not on the website yet. Of course, I'm publicly and proudly, openly pro-life all the time, and I have been for quite a few years now. So, but yeah, it will be a plank on the website, within the next couple days probably.
Okay.
So, and we do have a plank on it. But no, it's not on the website currently. In fact, there's probably 7 other planks that I have that have just not been put on the website yet. So
Okay, we'll be looking forward to reading it once it's there. But regarding, I guess, the Dobbs decision that came out reversing Roe versus Wade, I know that there are other libertarian candidates who have called for codifying Roe versus Wade, and just want you to elaborate on that and what you think of that.
Oh, sorry, there. Okay. Well, I think it's a double-edged sword because, as libertarians, of course, we believe in the 10th Amendment, and we believe that states have powers, maybe not rights, but powers to do what they believe is correct. But we're kind of seeing what happens in this situation here, where, like I said in the beginning of this, I think that if the federal government should exist at all, it should exist to protect the rights of everybody, including the preborn. And so now we have states like Ohio that have codified the right to murder an unborn baby into their constitution. And so I think that it was a mistake, truthfully, and I believe that these things should be illegal. I don't believe that in my anarchist heart of hearts. I think that whatever community I lived in, I would want them to make sure that murder is not okay and not codified into the rules of the association. And so I certainly want to live in a country that isn't barbaric enough to legalize murder of innocent children. So I'm not okay with it. I don't think it was a good idea. I don't know that the president isn't going to have a lot of power over that. Should I win this thing? I mean, I don't, I know it's kind of crazy to even talk about, libertarians winning in 2024. But should that, some crazy movie fairy tale ending happen, I would voice my discomfort with states having murder codified into their laws as legal. But I don't think that the president has much say over that currently. Unfortunately, it's all going to fall on the Supreme Court. And so I think we need a Supreme Court justice that's vehemently pro-life, that can reopen this and look at why we think that it's okay for states to say no, you can murder here in this state. So
okay, so I guess would you favor the federal government putting restrictions on abortion, or
personally, yes,
okay.
I would. And I've been pretty clear about that. Of course, it's not. Like I said, again, should we win this thing, I don't think that it's anything that the president can actually do. I think that's out of our hands, especially with the Supreme Court ruling. But yes, I believe that there are like I said, if the federal government should exist, even in my anarchist heart of hearts, I live in a reality that has a federal government. Should they exist, their only job should be to protect the rights of citizens of the United States, and to do so, I believe that murder cannot be okay. And maybe that's not, to me, that's not just the religious and faith-based side of me saying that either. That's I really think that in a moral, decent society, murdering a baby is a prophylactic is a bad idea and evil and terrible and unmoral and not just in a just society. So yeah, I would. And if the federal government is to exist, I think that if there's an FBI or there's a Homeland Security, and of course I've talked at great length about reducing the size of these federal bureaucracies and agencies by at least 75%, which the president has the power to do. We don't have the power as president to abolish these things. But I think that getting them down to 25% of what they are today gets them focused back on actual things like, interstate sex trafficking, child welfare, murder, interstate serial killers, the things they were designed to go after in the first place. And that's, to me, that's kind of like it's the maximum the president is allowed to do. I don't want to build a platform that's out of reality. I don't want to build a platform that says, "Oh, as president, I'm going to abolish the ATF and the CIA and the FBI because you don't have the power to do that as the president. That's an act of Congress. But like I said, the president does have the opportunity to do mass layoffs, and we can send a bunch of people to small departments around the country. We can make people janitors. There's all kinds of things you can do. So I plan on doing those things, but I also, if these agencies should exist, I think that they should go after child sex traffickers, and I think they should be used to go after, like I said, interstate serial killers. And if I had my way, they'd go after people, especially doctors who perform murder on children.
Right.
So
Yeah, getting back to the abortion issue and the constitutional issue, I think that many feel that since it's not in the Constitution, that the federal government doesn't have authority to regulate abortion,
right.
that it would need a constitutional amendment to do that. But apparently,
Does
and it
does it
doesn't.
does
Right.
it say in the Constitution
Right.
anywhere that that we, as government, are here to protect the right to life, liberty,
Right.
and the
But
like?
I guess
Yeah. So
Biden really doesn't care about that, and he's proposing that
yeah.
Congress pass a law, basically codifying Roe versus Wade, and he said he'll sign that the first thing, which would impose that restriction on the states. I would argue unconstitutionally, but at the state level, obviously, right now the states have the authority to outlaw
Right.
abortion, and I guess the more the merrier. I mean.
Yeah, I live in Iowa. I'm very happy to live here, but I'm from California, so you can basically kill a baby up to birth, and it's terrible.
Yeah. Um, okay. Now, moving on to the Libertarian Party and what our position should be on the abortion issue. What would you say about that?
So I believe that libertarian ideals are very important, and the most important libertarian ideal is the right to life. I think if a government we're running to govern people, right? I mean, this is a political party. At the end of the day, we have to accept that we are running to govern people, and I think that as a government, we should be protecting the rights and life of others, and so. I believe that the Libertarian Party should take, in my opinion, a strong pro-life stance. I think that we're the only pro-life party. We're the only party that wants to protect the right to life and end wars and do all the things that true pro-lifers are. And so, I believe that the party should take a strong pro-life stance. That's my very biased opinion, and I'm much happier without the plank that we had before that I think was so vague and really lended credence to a pro-choice position more than it did a pro-life position. And so I'm happy to have that plank removed. I'm happy that that's not there. I'm happy that our candidates get to message the way they want to message on this issue. But I also believe that the party itself, should they be the pro-life party that they should be, it should take a hard stance on the murder of children.
Okay, yeah,
So,
we've interviewed fellow candidates who claimed to be pro-life as well, who said that they don't believe the National Libertarian Party should take a pro-life stance, but they didn't have a problem with the state Libertarian parties doing that. So, in your perspective, both the National and the state Libertarian Party should take a pro-life stance?
yeah, I think the Libertarian Party should be the pro-life party. I believe it's the only pro-life party. You got the Republicans, still voting to fund abortion. So I think we're the only pro-life party, and we should be proud and loud about it. I know that may not be the popular position, but it's definitely my position.
Okay. How about drugs that cause abortion? Should they be available for sale, or should doctors be able to prescribe them?
Al, can you hold on just like
Sure.
30 seconds? Sorry.
Yes.
Albert, just curious while he's gone.
Okay, he's back.
Go ahead.
I'm back. Yeah. So in the issue of drugs, you mean like, should they be available?
Should they be available for sale, and should doctors be able to prescribe drugs that cause abortions?
No, I don't believe that doctors should be. No, absolutely not. Hold on, sorry, Al, I'm having problems here.
Are you leveling up?
Are you back?
All right, Al. Yeah, I think so.
So at the federal level, there should be a prohibition against the sale of such drugs.
So here's the thing: is I don't know if I would say that there should be a prohibition against any drugs, and I'm hesitant to say there should be prohibition against drugs. But I mean, a drug that is designed only to kill, yeah, it probably should have a prohibition on it. And I believe that doctors that prescribe it should be charged with murder. To be honest with you, so
okay. Okay, thanks for those answers. Just to have a couple more questions. One having to do, and you mentioned this a little bit, about transgender procedures. And I know there are different positions among the candidates on this, but you mentioned that you believe that doctors should be prosecuted if they do a transgender surgery on a minor. Is that accurate? And would that be a federal thing, or would that be a state thing? If you could elaborate on that. Hello?
sorry, I didn't.
Yeah,
can you
I
hear
can
me
hear you now. Did you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I heard that. So I have it in my platform specifically that I think they should be the doctors that perform these mutilative surgeries on children, and who push children towards these mutilative surgeries and long-term affecting drugs such as puberty blockers, which do have a use in some cases for illness and disease, but this is another trendy for-profit thing right now. Doctors are making money hand over fist by doing these elective surgeries and prescribing these drugs. And so I have it specifically in my platform that I believe the doctors that do that, and instead of, in mental health care, the goal is to help people come to terms with their reality. And instead they're pushing people to come to terms with living outside of reality. And it's harmful to children. And so I have it in my platform that they should be prosecuted the same as child sex trafficking under the U.S. code. And I can't remember the exact code right now. I have it in my platform, but yeah, I believe it should be absolutely banned. I understand that as libertarians, we have one of the major tenets of our philosophy is consent. And we have constantly had this dumb argument as adults over what age a child can consent. And the problem is that, children can't consent. When you're still living with your parents, your brain's still developing. You go through a million different phases in 1 year. Those kind of long-term decisions that can really harm your future need to be not okayed. I mean, it needs to be something that's not allowed. And unfortunately, we have a bunch of parents out there. When I was a kid, the parents just threw a Pomeranian in their purse and walked around, and that was how they got, cool points. Now they want to change their children's genders and be parents of an LGBTQ kid. And so we see it all the time where, it seems like the parents are pushing these kids to do this thing. And so we need doctors that are going to say, no, we're not going to do those things because they're harmful to children. And I think the only way to get to that position is by, putting pressure on the doctors and saying, look, if you do these things to children, you're going to be in trouble, just like anybody else who abuses children. And you're going to go to jail.
And should the age limit be 18 years old for voluntary consent for that?
Yeah, minimum for
And
sure. Yeah, I
would
believe
that
so.
should that be a federal or a state responsibility to monitor
I
those doctors?
so I think federally, the government has the duty to protect children. The same as the Homeland Security does for child sex trafficking, and so I think they have a duty to do that to protect children. And it's kind of like if you live next door to your neighbor and your neighbor was abusing their children, are you going to just, oh well, it's their right to abuse their children? It's not. It's nobody's right to abuse their children, and so I think that yes, absolutely, they could be they could be charged with a federal crime. Now, I don't know. I don't know that that's something that will come to pass should I win the presidency, but I damn sure believe that these things are abuse of children, and abuse of children should be handled by any authority that can. So, from the federal government down to the state and local level. But I think that we have a federal government now that's normalizing it instead of stigmatizing it, which is what it should be doing. And I think that we, like I say in my campaign all the time, this campaign is likely going to be a 50-state media tour. That's what it's all about. And if we can, get some people amped up on libertarian ideals who agree with us on these issues, then we need to move that Overton window. And I think that this platform especially helps move the Overton window away from the thought that all libertarians are just degenerates who want to change children's sex and this and that. So I think that we have a really good opportunity to do that this year, and kind of turn people off to the GOP and independent lifestyle. So
Yeah. Okay. Great. My last question has to do with immigration. Do you agree with the current stance of the Libertarian Party of unrestricted immigration?
no.
Okay. Could you explain that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is another one of those issues. It's just like it's like the abortion issue was for so long for this party. It's a huge wedge issue in the Libertarian Party, because again, we have to always go back to this reality that we live in, and not this, of course I want an anarcho-capitalist society. That'd be great to live in. I mean, that's the North Star. That's what we've been trying to work towards for all this time. But the truth of the matter is we're running to govern a society, and that society largely wants some type of protection for their property and their rights and their life. And one of those, 6 million people flooded across the Texas border last year. That's unsustainable for a society that pays taxes, and um, these taxes are being used to house and feed and give welfare to immigrants that just came over the border. While meanwhile, the 12% of the population in the United States is having problem putting food on the table of American citizens today. And so I think at some point we have to realize that not only is open borders like a wildly unpopular idea, I mean, just wildly unpopular in the United States, we're one of the only countries that really talks about doing it in the first place. Every country has some right to sovereignty. And the vast majority of the people that live in those countries want some type of national sovereignty, where they have their nation and it's not taken over by people from other countries and different cultures. And so I believe, I'm not like a closed borders guy. I've never been a closed borders guy. I do believe that there needs to be some type of process for immigrating to the United States, but there also has to be some way to vet the people coming here. We can't spend 40 to 60 years bombing and meddling and regime change in the Middle East, and then take every refugee that can cross the border, because a lot of those people aren't going to like us very much. And we're seeing it right now with this fight in Texas, where people are coming to the border from the Middle East, coming to the Mexican border, telling reporters that they're terrorists. They're here to hurt people, and they get across the border, they're going to hurt people. Like, that's happening, and so yeah, I think we have this moral conundrum of like, yes, it would be nice to have unrestricted borders entirely, where all goods and people can move across freely. In reality, we live in a nation with a government that's tasked with protecting the nation, right? Some type of national security. And I don't think we have any national security with unrestricted borders. And so, I think that it's libertarian to say, yes, people who want to come here should absolutely have the right to come here, but they have to have some kind of vetting process, whether it's an Ellis Island style fast track or not. I'm not sure. I don't have a staunch policy on it. I just know that the unrestricted open borders of the United States are going to be unsustainable over the next 10 years to the point of, driving our economy even further into the ground. So,
right. I think the big point is that not only is it currently open borders, but it's also subsidized immigration, because the federal government is basically providing free housing and transportation and basically processing and medical care and all that stuff to people who are crossing the border. So it's not libertarian at all if you're subsidizing it.
and cell phones, right. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there, and I'm not interested in, like, should I win the presidency in 2024? I'm not interested in getting in office and going, okay, we're going to deport every single person that's here, without papers. But I also believe that we do need to have some kind of border security that is, willing to protect our nation, from outside influences, and I believe that, the welfare state entirely needs to be dismantled, anyways. And then we can, once we have the incentives to come here and not be productive taken away, we can revisit those things, right? But right now, the incentive is come to America, we'll feed you, we'll house you, we'll give you a phone, we'll give you medical insurance, we'll send you to college. It's like at the cost of all the people who are already paying to do those things every day in their normal life. So we can have that conversation again should we end those welfare processes, but for now it's unsustainable. It's just unsustainable to the American public who live in this nation and pay taxes in this nation and work here and try to survive here. So
yeah, what do you think about an invitation basis system? I know other people like Dave Smith have mentioned that. What do you think of that as a possibility?
Yeah, and I've heard Rec talk about it as well a couple times, and I know that was something that Hoppe had brought up in a couple different papers on this issue. And I'm not super, like, it's not an idea that I'm against, and I do believe, and here's the problem. And I had this moral conundrum on Twitter the other day, and I honestly don't know the answer. I was actually asking truthfully to the open borders people, like, hey, how do you keep a known pedophile from living next door to your children? I mean, at some point we have to think about safety. Whether we're a nation without a government or a nation with a government, there has to be some kind of safety apparatus for people. And I think that, people, not only do they have the right to know if they're living right next door to somebody who has abused children in that way, they should have the right to say, I don't want to, those people can't live in our community. And I think on the grander scale, the American people have the right to say, we don't want anybody else in our country. But I think that, if it had some kind of system where someone was like, I'm willing to take responsibility for what this person does in our country as a sponsor, then that changes things.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm against it, and I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't know how well it would work. And I'm not an immigration specialist, obviously, as you can tell. But I do believe, there's got to be a process to have immigrants come here. I mean, we can't, as a nation, one of the biggest nations in the world, we actually can't survive without any kind of immigration. And so I think that it's important that we find a process that works for us, as opposed to against the American people who just want to have the normal American dream today. So
okay. Oh, thanks, Josh. And I'll just hand you over back to Kara for any additional questions.
Thanks, Albert. Okay, so you guys went over some of the stuff that I was going to ask, and some of it I wanted to kind of go in a little further, as well as a couple more things. Since you guys were just talking about immigration, I'll make a comment, and then I wanted to ask a follow-up question with that. So I'm in San Diego County, so I just want to, like, put this out there as like an example. Like a month ago, just our county decided to allocate was it no $50 billion or $50 million towards just immigration stuff, because the federal government has been dumping. I think we had 80,000 migrants like dumped in San Diego County just in the last couple months, and that is not counting like the people just coming around by boat and then jumping off of the shore and running up, or the people coming through holes in the fence or whatever. This is like people that the federal government have dropped off, and like that's like official, like they told our county supervisors who then told us. So I mean, there is a big influx of people, and it's affecting us with taxation and money. And so there is libertarian issues there, like such as we're getting taxed to pay for this, which you kind of mentioned, but I wanted to even just put a specific, number locally, like we've been paying. And then in addition to that, California, now is giving full health care. So that means anything up to like gender transition, so it's kind of like crazy, the kind of stuff that we're providing. And then additionally, the incentives are bringing people up this like dangerous path. There's like rapes, robberies, all kinds of like humanitarian crises along that path. And just overall, if you care about anything from taxation, is theft, to like, the safety of those people and like the kind of stuff we're kind of incentivizing them to do, it seems like our party could come up with a better, way to address it in our platform than it
Yeah,
currently is.
yeah, I agree with you. And I lived in Imperial Beach for 4 years, so like I've seen it
Oh yeah,
firsthand.
you're right there.
Yeah, I
You
mean, you
probably
could see
saw him coming
Mexico.
in on those.
Yeah, you could see them crossing, like into the bay there, and yeah, it's just it's a hard thing for me as like somebody who wants to be like purely libertarian, but I also understand that this is unsustainable. 6 million people across the Texas border last year. You times that by 10, all with free everything. We're paying for that, and as a party who wants to end taxation and end the welfare state and end these horrible, basically Ponzi schemes, such as Social Security and the like, we can't advocate to bring six or more million people a year. Supposing that it stays that small, we can't advocate to continue to flood the border like that while handing out all these entitlements and free things, because it's not fair to the people that do live here, first of all, but it can be dangerous. And so there's got to be some kind of vetting process while we roll back the welfare state, and then it can all be revisited after that. But like I said, it's just a wildly unpopular position to hold, especially in 2024, where you have a Democrat Party that has actually deported and stopped more illegal immigrants over the last 2 decades than the Republican Party has, and you have a Republican Party that's running entire campaigns on that issue. So it's a really wildly unpopular position to take. Currently, it's not going to give us any electoral success, and I just don't think that it's the correct position to take currently with the way the entitlements are set up to begin with.
Right. Yeah. It's like eventually, hypothetically, we could get there, but the like other things are kind of in the way. So one thing I want to ask, and I don't know if this is true, but someone pointed out, when we were kind of looking for questions to ask you, that previously you may have had a different stance on immigration, that you used to be like more like open borders, and now you've changed. And I'm
Very.
just curious if you did change your mind, when or why, what brought you to change your mind?
I think research. I think, as I was along my journey in Liberty, one of the first books I ever picked up and read was For a New Liberty by Rothbard. But I read so much pure libertarian literature that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be the pure libertarian guy, and anarcho-capitalism and only rights are property rights. And I still, in my heart of hearts, I believe that. But I do believe that, after working in politics for quite some time now, since 2008 at least, I understand more than I did then that the vast majority of the population does not hold those same values. And so if we are ever going to make a dent in society and try to roll back the size and scope of a very intrusive government, then we're going to have to try to kind of play ball with the populist message at some point. And I think 2016 taught us a lot. If you can talk till you're blue in the face about how terrible Trump was, I agree, but populism sells because people are worried about things. And if we're going to run for political office without addressing the fears of your constituency, you're going to lose every time. And I think, as libertarians, we're many times the best read person on the stage or in the room, but we're also the people who talk and don't listen. And, one of the things that's helped me as somebody who was the number one recruiter in the entire National Libertarian Party for 2 years straight, I learned that, the first question should always be, what are you worried about? Instead of, here, let me tell you all about libertarianism. And, people don't want a lecture. They don't want somebody who's going to give them a boring lecture on the great Murray Rothbard and his contribution to libertarian philosophy. They want to hear how you're going to address education, and they want to hear how you're going to address entitlement programs, and they want to hear how you're going to address immigration and drugs and criminal justice. And these are like real fears that these people have. It's not just like something they made up in their head entirely. They have fears and they're worried about it. And that usually stems from something in their community or their family. And, if you just don't address those issues at all, and instead decide to lecture them, we're never going to win, ever. So I changed. I changed, and it wasn't like oh, I'm only doing this to win elections. I do believe that people have valid fears and worries that we need to address.
For sure. No, it's totally normal, I think, too. I mean, like, it's not like all of us, some people woke up and were a libertarian the day they were born, but a lot of us go through a journey and, come to different realizations along the way. So I was just curious about that. So thank you for sharing. So another thing, of course, that is important to us is about the transitioning of minors, which you guys talked about pretty in depth. And as far as like, people should be punished that do try to do those transitions with minors. So I wanted to kind of look at the other side of that too. And that's basically like about protecting parents. Like in California, I mean, and it's always changing, they're always making it worse and worse, but they're trying, they try to do things like make sure even a foster parent or like in custody battles between parents that are separating, that like the affirming parent gets the kids, or and like there's a case in New York right now where a dad is I think it's his son is trying, the mom is trying to transition the son or whatever, the daughter transition their child, and he's trying to protect their child from that and having trouble fighting the courts. And then on top of that, we have in schools, like there was 2 teachers locally, and you're probably familiar with Escondido. There's a school in Escondido where 2 teachers are suing because they said it was against their religion to hide that and go along with transitioning these students at school and not let the parents know. So I just wanted to know if you have any thoughts about, parents' rights and how do we, protect the parents who are trying to protect their kids, basically.
Sure. I think there's like this is a big, huge problem in the United States that doesn't just have like one facet that fixes it. It's a multifaceted fix, right? And I talk about Title 4D quite a bit of the Social Security Act, which I think has lended a hand to all of these issues to begin with. The fact that we went from 1 in 4 or 1 in 60 children to living in a fatherless home to 1 in 4, of course. With that, we've seen the mental health issues increase drastically. Violent youth offenders in jail today, 80% of them are from fatherless homes. 70% of dropouts from fatherless homes. So I think that the first step is trying to remove those incentives to the states to separate families to begin with, and really I think that a lot of this stuff stems from not having a strong enough family values in America. So there's that. I also believe that the education system in the United States is absolutely detrimental to children, especially, but to parenting too. The Department of Education, since its founding, has tripled or more its spending, and test scores have largely stayed the same or dropped. So we need to get the federal government out of education entirely. Unfortunately, a lot of those issues that you're bringing up currently are, they're state issues, and it's going to take a lot more to fix them, even at the state level. And I think, inspiring down ballot candidates is really important. People that are going to carry this message to, local and state run office, but also my platform on trying to pass a law that makes it illegal for doctors to carry out these transitions on minors will lend a lot of credence to making it a lot harder for parents to fight about in court to begin with. And so, I think it's a multifaceted fix, and I think that my platform is probably the one that is the most closely aligned to actually fixing those problems. Like I said, through Title 4D, through outlawing these mutilative surgeries and drugs for children, for doctors to prescribe them or perform them. And of course, just putting the focus back on the family and getting inspiring other candidates to run around the country and states. So I think there's a lot of things we can do, and a lot of things I'd be willing to do to stop that.
Okay, thanks. So my next question, so I know you've brought up a little bit about your messaging, and so you kind of I know you get into these little tiffs with people and kind of go after them. So I have 2 Bible verses. Let me see here. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay," says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So there's that verse, but then there's also, let's see, this one, that was Romans 12:17-21, and then Matthew 10:34 to 30 was 36. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. So, I mean, it's like in the Bible, it seems like in one place they're talking about, not being someone who is taking on the task of revenge and punishment. And yet, in another place, he talks about, Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace on earth. I came to bring a sword. So I'm just curious what informs your approach, and if you feel conflicted about it, or if you feel like it is rooted biblically. I wanted to share both of those verses just because I can see the kind of the argument for both sides, I guess. So
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're all imperfect Christians, so I'm never going to be exactly godlike. Unfortunately, I know that most of us wish we could be, and so I'm not perfect, and I am brash. I am a brash personality. I have been for many years. Anybody who's been following me long enough understands that that's just kind of who I am, especially online, and in debates, and that's, a lot of that has been, I'd say, learned behavior since 2008, working in politics and realizing that 90% of the people that we have to deal with in politics are the worst people. They're not good people. It's not even like they just have some shortcomings. They're just really bad people. And so I kind of made a deal with myself several years ago. And in fact, probably after the 2020 convention or something, where I wasn't going to take any more shit from people online. I've had people attack my family and my personal life and call jobs. And last year, we had people from the party calling the DHS trying to get our adopted kids taken away. They actually helped stop us from adopting a child that is the baby brother of our 2 adopted children. And so I let it fly. And I know that to some people that's a turn off, and that's okay. I understand that. And God, I think it's Psalms. Let me look real quick. But there are a lot of verses that kind of back up, the whole, like, fight your wickedness as well. Let's see. I'm trying to find it. There's another one, but with God we shall do valiantly. It is He who will tread down our foes. And so I understand that, like, God wants us to, like, love one another and be loving in our messaging, but also, there's kind of that double-edged sword where He also talks about, picking up your sword and fighting, and so, as an imperfect Christian, I'm never going to be perfect, but I am honest about everything that I do, and I know my heart's in the right place when it comes to, these skirmishes with people, and I just, like I said, I made that deal with myself that I wasn't gonna take any more shit, and I was gonna tell people how I felt and be honest about my feelings and my positions, and so. That's where I stand now. I know it's a brash personality and it's not for everybody. And I've had some really great people come to me and tell me they wouldn't support me because of my brashness, who I respect dearly. But that's just, that's who I am when it comes to these kind of skirmishes, and it's probably who I'm going to be. I'm just hoping that I get the opportunity to focus that on the two-party system after May.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for answering that. I don't want you to take that as, I'm trying to judge you or attack you or anything. I'm sure you understand that, like, some people just raise that, and I, like, just thought it would be great for you to have the opportunity to address that directly, and so I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, and I think
So,
it's a lot more politically motivated than it would be scripture motivated. So yeah.
okay. Okay, would you want to go any more in depth about your pro peace positions, and about the way we have done interventions, or the way that we've been funding things? I mean, I'm sure most people know you're very pro peace, but if you want to just, like, elaborate, just in case some people aren't as familiar with those positions, because I think that's kind of one of the areas we didn't really touch on yet very much.
Yeah, sure. So, I obviously I came to these ideals by being an anti-war activist. There's no war in my lifetime, or probably anybody on this call's lifetime, that has benefited the United States of America. Sorry, hold on, Tatum. There's no war that has made us any safer in the United States. In fact, it's made us wildly less safer. And so, on top of that, we're sending billions and billions of dollars to countries that, either we toppled and destroyed, or that are helping us topple and destroy other countries without benefit to the citizens of the United States. So, my goal as president would be, first of all, to throw the power back to Congress by ending the authorization of use of military force. I think that this open-ended spending package, basically, for the president to commit acts of war anywhere he wants, is absolutely atrocious. It needs to be ended right away. I think our federal government needs to declare war should there be a war, and they need to be held accountable by their constituency. And so the only way to do that is for them to have to vote yes or no on going to war, to give the president the power to do that. On top of that, I think that all wars around the country, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in Palestine, Syria, Yemen, Ethiopia, Iraq, which we've been bombing for 33 years now, needs to be ended right away. We need to bring our troops home, put a more aggressive focus on their mental health through a broken VA system, so that they can reintegrate with normal life, not warfare. And then we need to reevaluate diplomatic trade deals with countries, and stop sending money to countries that aren't benefiting American citizens. So, a lot of people have said that I'm the Libertarian America First candidate, and I believe that. I'm running to represent the people of the United States of America, and if we're not running to make sure that our policies benefit them, then we just need to get out of the race today. And one of the most important probably is that a third of our national budget is going to bomb people overseas constantly, and it needs to be ended yesterday. 50 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for elaborating on that. I just wanted to check real quick what your time is like, how much time you have left.
I got a few minutes left. I am home now, and I got 7 kids in the house, and they're all
Right.
vying for
Yeah, okay.
attention.
I
But
did hear that. And you know that we do this with the Center of Natural Law, and Greg showed up late and we brought him up. So if it's all right, I'd like to give him a chance to ask a couple questions before you hop off.
yeah, of course, please do ask away.
Okay. All right, go ahead,
Hi.
Greg.
Hello, Josh. Yeah, sorry, I did come sliding into home plate here a little late. I don't know what you covered in the beginning. I'm going to put a couple of questions in together. But before I do, that is correct. I am with the Center for Natural Law. Natural law is what justifies, supports the libertarianism. So here are my questions, and they have to do with the administrative state, governmental overreach, governmental neglect, and civil disobedience. We have seen, especially in recent times, with regard to COVID, for example, overreach, government mandating certain things they had no business mandating, the masks, the vaccines, and a whole bunch of other things, closing businesses and so forth. President Biden sitting down and canceling the Keystone Pipeline. All of these regulations and the power of government. And government can be very, very destructive. We libertarians know this, and we're trying to alert the rest of the population about that. So it's government overreach and government neglect. So with regard to the border, and just using that as an example, the more recent example, we hear of militias going down to Texas, or we hear of, the guardian angels stepping up in New York City to lend a civilian support to some abuses that are taking place. So here, two parts of my question are this. The administrative state is far too big. I'm in total agreement with, and perhaps you are too, I would imagine you are, with Vivek Ramaswamy when he had claimed he would, and when he was elected, he would engage in mass firings and fire up to 75% of the administrative state. I fully am in support of that. But now, with regard to civil disobedience, when the government overreaches or when the government is neglectful, for example, with the border, there does seem to be an invasion as far as I'm concerned, pretty clear. What would you recommend Americans can do? To what extent would you recommend that we start acting privately, aggressively, perhaps, in correcting the problems of government? Would you recommend militias? At what point should we engage our own government to correct some of these problems of overreach or neglect? That's my question.
Well, if you want my personal opinion, it's that the time has already passed, and I believe that obviously I'm a big supporter of militias, and I think that everyone should group up and train and be ready for things, because we're not going in a good direction. Let's just put it that way. So I do believe that the 10th Amendment allows Texas to set its own border policy. As of right now, and I do believe they have the right to tell the federal government, in this case especially, where it doesn't in the Constitution actually give the federal government the right to tell Texas that they must take in 6 million people a year. And so yeah, I agree there. I agree on the administrative state entirely. In fact, it was funny because I was talking a little bit about this when Vivek started talking about it, but I had the same policy. I think that the administrative state is bloated, out of control, absolutely indistinguishable from any other of the most tyrannical governments in history. They need to be cut by 75%. More if they can. Who's left? We need to send around to smaller departments around the country, and maybe janitorial departments, if possible. So, yeah, it's the federal government has grown so big and out of control that we have FBI agents infiltrating Catholic groups. We have FBI agents going to PTO meetings during COVID, calling soccer moms terrorists. I mean, what were they built for? Were they built for this? I don't think so. I contend that they're so big that they have too much time to focus on things that don't matter to the national security of the the people who live in America. So I believe that citizens are well within their right now to tell the government to pound sand, and that this overreach is far extended a violation of their own human rights and individual rights, and COVID especially. I mean, this is the greatest tyranny. The last 4 years have been the greatest tyranny of my lifetime, maybe ever in the United States. And I think there's people who either don't understand that or don't care, but there's a lot of people that have come around to this idea. And I think we saw a great paradigm shift during this thing where the right decided that holistic medicine was actually important, and that the police state was bad. And so, I agree on all fronts there. Like I said, I'm a big supporter of the 2A. I'm a 2A extremist. I won't vote for somebody who's not a 2A extremist. I won't support. I won't endorse. I won't work with anybody who's not a 2A extremist. And I'm a big part of the gun community myself. And militias are perfectly within our rights as U.S. citizens. And I encourage everybody who's listening to this to join one. And learn to fight and train. And, there may be a time where you got to protect your family. And I think it's important to be ready for that.
So in our private lives, we should, at this point in time, and I agree with everything that you just said. So in our private lives, the way that would manifest itself is that we should do whatever we can, whenever we can, as private citizens and as businesses, to disrupt or disobey the regulations that are imposed on us that we deem to be ridiculous, or destructive or counterproductive, that we should actually start to, you said we're past the point of the tipping point. I totally agree there. How does that manifest? I mean, are we at the point, we're not at the point of violence, or might you recommend that? Or at what point, what does violence look like? Or at the present time, should we just disregard, disobey these regulations? Look at what happened to the January 6th guys. They're in prison. Some of them for.
Well, first of all, let me start off with by saying that I don't advocate any violence, and to my NSA agents that are listening to me currently, this is not something that I advocate at all. But I do understand it. I understand that we're probably close to a violent point in history. It's getting worse and worse, and I think that the frog has already done boiled. And so I believe that, yes, that should you have the opportunity to resist, you should resist these terrible edicts from the government. I think that the January 6th protesters should be, let go immediately from prison. I think that anybody who gets into office should be working with circuit courts to overturn convictions entirely. Yeah, I'm on board with all that. As far as violence goes, I'm not going to advocate violence. I think that, I think at some point the government wants violence. It gives them the opportunity to call people extremists and put them in jail. But anything else that you can do to opt out of the system, and I talk a lot about this on my show. I think the Civil War has already started. It's not a violent civil war. A lot of people are like, oh, you want a civil war where you have to go up against the government jets with the AK-47? I don't think that's what the Civil War is in 2024. I think the Civil War is Bitcoin and opting out of the federal fiat system. I think that it's holistic medicine. I think that it's growing your own food. I think that it is 3D printing your own firearms. I think that those things are already happening, and people are opting out of this fiat system that the government has created already. And, as a presidential candidate, part of my goal would be to get more people to do those things. I think that, and some people might call me a Bitcoin bro or whatever you want to call it. But the truth is that this is a framework that is Mateo, please stop, son. This is a framework that has been laid. That's a monetary system that circumvents the federal government. Like, that's a very important thing for us to partake in. And it takes dollars away from this giant counterfeiting machine that steals our wealth through a tax called inflation in the Federal Reserve. And so, these things are already happening, and I advocate for those things. Absolutely, 100%. Anybody who's listening to this should be doing at least one of those things, if not all of them. And any way that you can opt out of the federal fiat system, the better. And that's absolutely 100%. I do not advocate violence. I advocate defense, and I believe that you have to take your own harm, danger into your own hands when it comes to violence. And so, if you are thinking about that, you should probably really do some serious thinking on that, and whether that's good or not for your family and your community. But I do know that these other things that I'm talking about are easy to do. And they're a way to start opting out of the federal fiat system today. So.
Very good, Josh. Thank you.
I know, Josh, I know you're home and you got to get to your family. And so normally we do a couple questions from the thread, but since you got to go, I was just going to ask if you could maybe later, when you have time, maybe address a couple of the questions in there.
I could probably take like one or two if you guys want.
Okay, Jess, do you have any questions that you would like to ask him at this time?
Yeah. So one question was, are you familiar with the Christian nationalist movement, and what are your thoughts on it?
I am familiar with the Christian national. I have a lot of friends that are Christian nationalists, and some people would probably say that I'm a Christian nationalist in some respects. My thoughts are that it's kind of like another one of those moral conundrums. Like, I understand and I believe that America should be a nation built on Christian foundation. I do believe that. But I also am a libertarian, and I believe that people have the right to worship as they see fit. And I don't believe that our views should be forced on people when it comes to things that aren't, rights abuses. And so, when I'm thinking about a society, a moral fabric of society, to me, it's a Christian moral fabric. And I believe that that's really important. But I wouldn't call myself a full-blown national Christian nationalist, but I empathize with them, and I believe that they're right on like 90% of the issues. So.
All right. And if you have time, I have a more complex one. If you don't have time, then feel free to reply to it in the chat, but it's a little more complex.
How complex? Like, it's gonna take me a long time to answer.
I'll read it to you. You let me know. So it says, do you think that as technology develops in the area of artificial wombs or ways to keep babies alive and developing outside of their mothers, that the quote, it is a woman's body, she should have the right to evict a child, end quote, arguments will lose favor?
I don't know if it'll lose favor. And here's the thing: I don't know much about the artificial wombs yet. I've read a little bit about it, and I think I think it could be a great thing for a child who maybe medically can't live in a womb. I think that'd be a great life-saving device if it works. But I just don't know enough about the artificial womb to say anything about it. I hear about it a lot, and it always seems like, oh, we're 2 years off, and I've been hearing that for 10 years. So I'm not sure, but I also I don't think that a baby should be removed from the womb to put in an artificial womb just to stop the mother from killing it. I think that murder should be, looked at as not a right in the United States. So, yeah, I don't know enough about it to make like a really informed comment on it.
Yeah, like I said, it's complex. That's completely a fair answer, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I probably could take one more if there's one more.
I'm not seeing another one.
Okay. Well, then I'll probably have to end it here because I have a 3-year-old in Spider-Man boots that is really wants my attention right now. But I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys so much. I know, I'm not the run-of-the-mill libertarian candidate. I am brash. I do have some positions that some people might find, too overbearing. But at the end of the day, I believe that I am a libertarian. I believe that I have the best message that appeals to, the most people when we're talking about, these libertarian ideals and policies. I think that the family is so important in the United States, and just having a messenger that's going to go out and talk about the importance of strong family and how, really opting out of the fiat, the federal fiat system, the most important thing you can do is have a strong family that doesn't rely on the system. I think that I have the best message when it comes to those principles, and I really hope that I can have your guys' support in May.
Well, thanks,
Thanks
Josh.
so much for your time,
Thank you,
Josh.
Josh. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. You have a great evening, and I will see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share for the people here that we do have 2 more of these interviews coming up. The next 2 will be on Zoom, however, so we will be sharing the link for those. On February 11th, we will be interviewing Mike Termott on Zoom. It'll be at the same time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Then on the 18th of February, which is the very next Sunday, we have Jacob Hornberger, also via Zoom, and again, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. And with that, Albert, do you have any closing comments? Oh, Albert's gone. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. And if anybody missed this, be sure to share the link with them so they can hear if they're interested to hear from the Christian and pro-life perspectives what a candidate has to say. We have previously done one with Toad, and our first one was with Dr. Rechtenwald. So again, thanks for coming, and everybody have a good rest of your evening. Bye-bye.